Doc Talk, brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Bob, welcome to Doc Talk.
It's good to be here, Dr. Dan.
Well, it's always good to have you here. To introduce you folks to Dr. Larson. Dr. Larson is the Jones Chair of Production Medicine here at Kansas State University, and he is, you're a full professor.
Yep.
And you are in the clinical sciences. What are some of the things that you enjoy doing?
Well, I get the opportunity to teach veterinary students, and I enjoy that a lot. We also do a lot of research work with cattle, looking at ways to improve health and profitability of beef cattle production.
Well, always good to have you on the show, always good to have topics with you, and this is one that you're pretty familiar with, and that's taking care of these baby calves when they hit the ground.
That's right. I think cattlemen know that the first 2 to 3 weeks of life is really critical for our calf's health. We know that the greatest risk of death for a calf is during those first 2 to 3 weeks of life. So this is a time frame when we should really concentrate on the calves, the environment they're in, and doing all we can to make sure that they get off to a good, healthy start.
Yep, couldn't agree more. And as we were talking about this, the first thing we're going to talk about is when that calf's born.
Yeah.
And all the things surrounding that ordeal and preventing dystocia.
Yeah. The first couple of hours are critical, and they're critical for a couple of reasons. One is dystocia is it's the veterinary word for calving difficulties. So a difficult birth takes the cow a long time to have this calf. He can have a number of problems with that. One is just he's exhausted. The dam is exhausted. The cow is exhausted. Also, it can be a long enough process that his tongue is swollen. It has difficult suckling, all those kinds of things. And just if it takes long enough, or if the calving is difficult enough, it can actually kill him in just the calving process. So dystocia can end up in death itself. Or the other problem is, even if they live, they're not likely to get up and suckle very soon. Colostrum, getting that early milk into the calf, is critical, and the way that I am most certain to get that colostrum into the calf is if the calf is born easily, turns around, jumps up, his mom's already standing, and he starts suckling. If that happens, he's likely to drink all the colostrum that he needs.
Right.
If either he or the cow is laying on the ground for a prolonged period of time because of calving difficulty, we're not going to get up and start suckling when I want them to.
So then we probably need to intervene with some colostrum or something of that.
Yep, help him along.
Dystocia fatigue.
That's right. It can't be good.
No. And so when we're sitting there looking at the fatigue and the fatigue calf, when you use colostrum, do you use a bag feeder?
I prefer to use frozen or fresh cow colostrum.
Right.
That's not always easy to get. So
Right.
if I can, I will use colostrum right from the cow. If I can't get that, like milk out that calf's mother,
Yep.
or another cow in the herd, I will use a powdered colostrum or something like that if I need to.
Perfect. Thanks for being here today. And thank you for joining us. When we come back from the break, more with Dr. Larson on taking care of that baby calf. You're watching Doc Talk, and we're sure glad you joined us.
Doc Talk, brought to you by Kansas Pork Association, assisting producers and informing consumers.
Hi there and welcome back to Doc Talk. I'm joined by Dr. Bob Larson, and Dr. Larson is Jones Chair here in Production Medicine at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. We're talking about taking care of the neonatal or newly born calf. We talked about dystocia and calving difficulties in colostrum, and the next thing is keeping them warm.
Yeah, as when we calve in the wintertime or spring, one of the real concerns is just getting too cold and not getting off to a good start. Obviously, they're born wet.
Right.
And so they need to dry off and get their body temperature up pretty early. One of the things that I worry about is particularly in calves that are born in a real cold spell or a snowstorm or something like that, I think it's wise to carry a thermometer around. And they need to get their body temperature up above 100 degrees real quickly. Any calf that is on the ground and not able to really respond like I want him to, take a body temperature, and if it's below 100 degrees, we're going to intervene. Intervene, maybe bring him into the cab of the pickup truck and warm him up, maybe take him to the house or a barn and warm him up, but I'm going to get that calf warmed up as soon as possible. Oftentimes you think about snowstorms, cold weather, that kind of thing causing low body temperatures. The other one that can do it is a little bit later in the spring when we get some cool spring rains.
Yeah.
If he gets wet and stays wet, again, related to the dystocia, if he doesn't get up and get a belly full of warm milk, those can start to be a real series of problems that are going to cause his body temperature to drop. So my rule of thumb is really that they need to get that body temperature up. During cold snaps, it's a good idea for the cowboy and the rancher to have a thermometer and just check those calves and be ready to get them warmed up if they need it.
Great ideas, and you put them in the cab of the pickup, make sure the cow doesn't
follow you in there.
And the other thing is that, we want to make sure that we tell people on a public health note, if you take those calves indoors into your kitchen or into your bathtub, that we can be bringing E. coli or salmonella into the house, and
Exactly.
if you have young kids or elderly people living there, be really careful.
Yeah, remember that a few of the organisms that cause diarrhea in calves can also cause diarrhea in humans, so yeah, we want to keep those separate from food and water and wash our hands and all of those types of activities.
Well, speaking of sanitation and segregation,
Yeah.
kind of segues right into our next topic on these calves. And so when you mean sanitation and segregation to prevent neonatal calf illness, what are we talking about here?
Well, again, we talked about dystocia. Actually, difficult birth is a big risk of dying. Mm-hmm. If they survive that, the next biggest risk that we are concerned about in that first 2 to 3 weeks of life is diarrhea.
Right.
Scours or diarrhea. And the way we really try to prevent that is try to have that calf in as clean an environment as possible. So I know we're talking about cattle that live outdoors.
Right.
So we're not talking about hospital room clean, but as clean as possible. And so anything with a grass cover, turf cover, even when the grass is dormant, that is what I'm really looking for. Get them out of the mud, get them up where they can really spread out and be as clean as possible. By age segregation, a young calf's worst enemy is a slightly older calf. So that calf that's in the first 1 to 2 weeks of life, the calf that's most likely to make him sick is the one that's 3 or 4 or 5 weeks of age. So I like to segregate pastures with just a couple of weeks worth of age group in each pasture so that they don't have older calves around them.
Perfect. When we come back from the break, more with Dr. Bob Larson on taking care of baby calves.
Doc Talk, brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey there, and welcome back to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here from the College of Veterinary Medicine, my guest, who is the Coleman Chair.
Yeah, we got that right.
Yeah, here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine in the Department of Clinical Sciences, Dr. Bob Larson. And we were talking about, as we left the break, sanitation and segregation, which are very, very important to preventing calf scours. Mm-hmm. And, let's elaborate a little bit more on different methods or different processes that ranchers and farmers employ.
Well, one of the strategies that people have probably heard about, if they've been reading some of the magazines the last few years, is what's called the Sandhills method of calving. Mm-hmm. And this was really developed by a group of scientists up at the University of Nebraska. I got to give those guys credit. They came up with a pretty simple plan of trying to really improve the sanitation the calves are born in, as well as keeping them away from older calves. And the strategy is basically to have the first 2 weeks of calving in one pasture.
Right.
And then any cow that has not calved in those first 2 weeks, she goes into a new pasture. So that as those calves are born, they basically kind of start the calving season over again in that pasture, and they're not around those older calves. And then if you can, the ideal is to move them every week. Move the ones that haven't calved. So in each pasture, you've got just 1 week age spread in each pasture. That's the ideal, and I really like it when you can pull that off. I understand that takes a lot of pastures, and that may not be practical. I get that, again, this isn't exactly what the Nebraska data says, but I would say that if you can move at least every 2 weeks, so that within a group there's only 2 weeks of age spread from the youngest to the oldest, that does a lot to help us prevent diarrhea and scours in these young calves, just so they're not exposed to those older calves. Also, by moving occasionally, moving those pastures, we're constantly moving new young calves, or they're going to be born, onto fairly uncontaminated pastures.
Right.
There haven't been other cows on there. So if you can do that, you really optimize both the cleanliness of the area where they're calving, and they're not around those older calves that can shed more germs and cause
You kind of
illness.
have both the sanitation and the segregation deal going on.
Really fixed in the same strategy.
And if you have 2 pastures, then do it in 30 days. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have 2, at least you're separating it at a point and maximizing the opportunity.
Yeah.
And not everybody can get it done, but
That's exactly right. If you're down to two pastures, then as soon as half the calves are born, start the next half on a new clean pasture. And so we always move the heavies. We move the ones that are late in pregnancy away, and so that that group can start calving in a brand new pasture as frequently as we can.
Right.
Every week if possible, whatever else we can accomplish so that they start on new clean pastures.
well, and it just makes good sense. Typically we used to do it the other way around. We would
Yeah.
kick the cow. We'd have our calving area, and we'd kick the cows with their calves out into the pasture and leave them in the same environment.
Right, and so this is a better strategy compared to that. And then the other question is, well, how long do they have to stay apart? Well, by the time those calves are about 6 weeks of age, they're a lot tougher than they were during those first 3 weeks. So once they get to be about 6 weeks of age or so, I can put the whole group back together, and you start putting cows back together again as they go to summer grazing.
Excellent. When we come back, more with Dr. Bob Larson on taking care of baby calves.
Talk brought to you by Kansas Pork Association, assisting producers and informing consumers.
Welcome back to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Bob Larson, who's the Coleman Chair of Production Medicine here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. And we've had a great discussion today about taking care of those baby calves when they hit the ground. And now we're going to kind of wrap up today's show by talking about healthy cows.
Yeah, I think one of the ways to think about it, and it's not a surprise to anybody, but good healthy calves have healthy mothers.
Right.
And so by healthy mothers, what I mean is the herd as a whole has a good vaccination program. They have a feeding plan and a forage utilization plan where those cows stay in good body condition. They're not too thin, they're not too fat. They're dewormed when they should be to make sure that they're not carrying a heavy parasite load. And so I expect the best luck, and luck is usually what you make of it, but the best luck as far as calf health is when the cows are a good, healthy herd. All of the things that we talk about, nutrition, vaccination, sanitation, on those cows are top-notch, and then we're much more likely to have a good success with those calves as they're born.
Working with your veterinarian is just critical, and your nutritionist, to making sure you have optimum health, optimum nutrition.
And part of the key of that is that you're thinking about these things weeks and months ahead of the big stress times. As I said, that
Right.
the time frame when calves are at most risk of dying is those first 1 to 3 weeks of age. So we don't want to start thinking about that when we're 1 week away from calving.
Right.
We want to think about that when we're weeks and months ahead, so we can really put things in place. We can get our calving pastures set up. We can do any scraping of dry lots that we need to prepare them. We can have our cows in good body condition heading into calving. The vaccinations are done. So prior planning prevents problems as we move into calving.
Yeah, and it's so critical and it takes you 5 minutes walking on somebody's farm to tell who's planned and who hadn't.
Yes, that's almost always true.
And we'd like to have be able to check boxes and do audits and assessments, but my whether you walk into a school, a business, a farm, whatever, when one's being run right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a lot of opportunities to get better. If you're really good at what you're doing, there's opportunities to get a little better. If you're struggling with some of the things we talked about, calf health, death loss in calves being higher than we want, cows that aren't in this body condition we want, there's things we can do, and you can go get help. And that help, I like to use that local veterinarian. he and she is very knowledgeable about the things you want to do, extension, nutritionists. There's a lot of people that you can go to get the information you need to really improve the operation no matter where you are right now.
Well, great information today. Thank you very much for joining me.
It's always good to be here.
Yeah, it's always great to have you. If you want to know more about what Dr. Larson and I do here at the College of Veterinary Medicine, you can find us on the web at www.vet.ksu.edu. Remember, always work with the local veterinarian. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here from the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University. You've been watching Doc Talk. We're sure glad you joined us, and I'll see you down the road.